We are the only organization worldwide that legitimately provides highly educated and knowledgeable advice on all of the technologies, all of the nuances, all of the considerations you have to make when you're installing a simulator. And really any installation. We're mostly focused on the people that are doing it in their homes because that's where the major mistakes are frequently made. I had one guy a number of years ago that built out a simulator space. It wasn't the right space. If he had come to us, we could have easily built the right space. Instead, he ended up putting it in his living room, much to the dismay of his wife. But we do all this for free.
Golf Smarter number 816. The father of golf simulator software, Bill Bales, wants to make sure you set up the right simulator in your home.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Bill.
Hi, Fred.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Hope you are too.
Well, we're doing really well. We've just spent the last 40 minutes trying to get online to record this interview and went the old-fashioned way. We're recording it on a digital recorder.
Actually, do you want me to tell you a very controversial quick story?
Please. I love
about
stories.
Technology.
Oh, even better. Go for it.
All right. So, I mean, it just ties into what we've just been through. And reflects negatively on me, which is fine. But so I used to write a blog that had a very loyal following by a relatively few number of people, like my mother and that sort of thing. And it was we called it the next 500 years, and it was supposed to be everything about golf, and actually. That was my company About Golf but it was at the next500years.com. It doesn't exist anymore. And, but I would write these regular blogs, and I did not do it. Nothing promoted About Golf or About Golf products or anything like that. I just wrote about the, anything in golf. A lot about discrimination against women, slow play, club fitting, equipment, diversity in the game, that sort of thing. And a lot of times I would just write about something like a nightmare phone call I had with DirecTV, and then somehow tie it into golf at the last paragraph. But I wrote an article that actually was a pretty serious article and ended up getting fairly widely published. Lots of websites, and it was called The Dawn of the Launch Monitor. And it was back in the early days of launch monitors. It was basically just kind of a C-Dick run explanation of the launch monitor industry. But I was very careful, but in this whole day, you got to be so careful about the way you word things today. But I was actually very careful back then. But I did say something, which I tended to do, slightly maybe controversial, in that I first of all, I looked up, I used the word simian, first of all, but I looked it up. It's not a discriminatory or prejudicial or racist comment to use the term simian. I want to make that very clear.
But wait, I apologize for this, but when you say simian, to me, I think of the shortstop for the Toronto Blue Jays, who used to play at Cal and the Oakland A's.
An early version of man, essentially.
Okay.
And And I made a comment. This was a comment about using technology, and I made a comment in the article about the average club, the typical club pro, having the technical skills of a below average simian. And some people got it and some didn't. One person that didn't get it was Gary Wyron, the Dr. Gary Wyron, the little pro or whatever. Anyway, so I got an email from Gary, and it said that, he took umbrage in my referring to club pros as below average simians, because, he has a PhD, and I appreciated that. But my response was, Gary, you didn't really understand what I was saying, though, because I wasn't saying that club pros are below average simians. I said that they tend to have the technical skills. So I said, as an example, I was never able to set the time on my VCR, for anybody that remembers.
Classic conundrum.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Right. And I said, that doesn't make me an idiot, but I said, I have enough experience working with, pros that they have great skills in other areas. Typically they're not guys that know how to set the time on their VCR. That's all I was saying. And I was saying that, this technology needed to be more user friendly. Anyway, so that was kind of so I found myself as a below average simian trying to connect with you earlier.
And he probably had to dictate his email response back to you to somebody else because he couldn't type it out himself.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm not going to go the way of John Gruden for having said that. But
I think John Gruden had a lot of other problems beyond that.
Yeah. Right.
But it's interesting that, you're coming to the golf world. Actually, I need to clarify this. Are you coming to the golf world through technology, or are you coming through technology from the golf world? Where's your chicken and egg start?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked a question that good. And I've done a lot.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Signing off. No, you know what? So, all right. So look, I started playing golf I'm 68. I started playing golf when I was 5. And I literally, when I got into when I made the decision to get into the computer software business, I didn't even know what it was. So, and that was in the 80s. So, the answer is I was in golf first, but involved in golf first, but not in the golf industry per se.
Just as a golfer.
Yeah, but actually that brings up another story I think you get a kick out of. I always said that golf and technology is like oil and water.
Sure. I can attest to that.
Two very divergent worlds, at least in the old days.
Yeah.
And I remember I had some relationships at the PGA Tour, and I actually did some sort of off the cuff free sort of quasi consulting with a guy named Ruffin Beckwith, who was at the tour, was assigned the task of developing the World Golf Village and the Hall of Fame. And my partner was the lawyer that politicked to get the freeway exit in St. Augustine where it's located and that sort of thing. And so I got a call and asked if I could come meet with some of the folks at the tour. They had some things they wanted to talk about. I went down, and if you've ever been the tour HQ, there's two buildings, but the kind of the prime building, they both look alike, but they have a conference room where it's like a 15-minute walk from one end of the table to the other. And I go in this room, and the table was pretty much filled. And at the time, the head of the CEO of PGA Tour Golf Course Properties, which was one of the major divisions, they don't like all the TPC courses, basically everything for profit at the tour. A guy named Vernon Kelly, who was quite a legend there. He was leading the meeting, and he got up from the end of the table and walked all the way down to the middle of the table, and he threw a copy of the Jacksonville paper on the table right in front of me, and he said, "You see that headline?" And I said, "Yeah, it was a headline about the tour announcing, or the World Golf Foundation announcing, the World Golf Village and the Hall of Fame," and they were talking about the Hall of Fame. And he said, "You see that article about the Hall of Fame?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "All right, so look down the 2 or 3 paragraphs, see where I'm quoted there." And as quote from Vernon Kelly saying, we're gonna populate the museum with interactive displays.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, that's great." He goes, "I only have one question." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "What is an interactive display?"
Oh my gosh! So I'm curious now. I need to know. Did you follow through and continue working with them through the development of the Hall of Fame?
I gave them ideas, and worked with Ruffin a bit, and actually Ruffin was kind enough. There were 2 handmade coffee table books about, by Ralph Applebaum and Associates, which developed the whole concept for them, that he gave me this beautiful book, as a thank you. But, it was not a fee-based thing. It was just sort of casual discussion. But what happened was, collectively, all of the powers of the World Golf Foundation, which is really the big 6 in golf, R&A, USGA, LPGA Tour, PGA of America, NGF. Basically, the way that thing fell, that basically ended up with no technology. And I'm sorry to say that the museum has been a relative disaster.
Well, it's interesting because when they were developing that, I was asked to bid on an interactive attraction that I was doing in other sports at the time. That was called Fantasy Play-by-Play, where fans got to be the announcers of great moments in that sport. And I was doing this at the Super Bowl, their NFL experience. I did it at the NBA All-Star Game, the Baseball All-Star Game, the Hockey All-Star Game, WrestleMania. I even did the Ryder Cup when it was in New York many, many years ago, before I was even playing golf. And we let fans be the announcer of, like he sunk a 40-foot putt to win the Ryder Cup type of thing. And they had me bid out on doing an attraction for them at that Hall of Fame. And I didn't get the job, but I don't know if they ever did it because I was the only one doing that at the time. So I don't know if they allow people to be announcers or not. So I've never been
what? I haven't tracked it in a while. That's a very good story.
Thank you.
They did come back to me a handful of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, just because I know folks there, and so we got to talking about, we're finally going to get a budget together to, really, maybe make something out of this and do something with technology. Do you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, I'll give you a very good idea. And I don't think there was any execution on it. We even offered to help them with it. But basically at that point, I suggested that, and this is not rocket science anymore, but use AR, augmented reality. So have that, if you've been there, they have that, like this huge room devoted to just photos of the people in the Hall of Fame, and then there's lockers, but it's just totally static, right?
Right.
But it's a huge room. I said, well, you could get video of all these guys. You can even get old video of Hogan or something.
Sure.
And, just you look at the picture of Hogan, and Hogan can just walk out of the wall and say something or hit a shot or do something. That'd be kind of, and you could just, rent, or you create a revenue stream out of it. You can rent the AR glasses when you go in, and they turn them in when they come back, and that would be, you could do that. They're like, I forget,
sure.
Maybe it's a Smithsonian. You can look at dinosaurs walking through the room and stuff like that. But I don't, I think they're pretty hopeless because they just can't get all the minds together, and they have it geared. They're only focused on 55 and older. And I said, you're not going to grow the game if you're not getting kids in here. But they just never had that thought process.
No, they've never figured that out.
Yeah, okay. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we're going to take a time out. we're going to get beyond the stories of all the problems that we're having with technology in golf, but we'll dig deeper because we're going to talk about golf simulators and things like that and how you really launched that whole thing. So stay tuned after this commercial break by some random sponsor. I'm not really sure who it's going to be, but we'll be back right after this. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, episode 132, is part 2 with putting instructor and author Paul Hobart on his putting method called banana putting. This episode was originally a members-only episode, so it's never been shared publicly before. So if you heard last week's episode, then you don't want to miss the next 2, as I broke this one up into 2 parts since it was almost an hour long. Here's a taste of what he has to teach us.
I like the term roll it versus hit it, because I think it just, in the golfer's mind, it creates a different motion of the putter back and forth. If you think about rolling something, it kind of has a smoother feel to it. I think when people are thinking about hitting, my experience is that typically they're going to hit with their trailing hand. So for a right-handed golfer, you put that little pop in down at the bottom with your right hand. Sometimes you see people that are very handsy. It almost looks like they're chipping the ball with their putter. I think rolling, just for most people, kind of inspires more of a quiet hands kind of stroke.
That's episode 132, part 2 of 3, featuring author Paul Hobart on Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released this Friday. As I explained last time, his website is no longer active, but the book is still available on Amazon, and the link is in that show's notes. Golf Smarter Mulligans are the earlier episodes of Golf Smarter that are no longer available on any podcast app, but still has really helpful advice for golfers of all skill levels. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are available from where you're listening to this podcast right now. That's 2 episodes of Golf Smarter each week. Please write a review, subscribe, and follow both of our golf podcasts and all the shows from Smarter Podcast Network so that you can download or stream the brand new episode when it becomes available on your favorite listening device. Okay, Bill, we're back, and we're here to talk about Clarity.golf, which is your company now. But you have been involved in the development of golf simulators from the very beginning, correct?
Yeah, actually, I answered that question earlier today. Not from the very beginning, but starting about for real, full time, starting in 2002. Dabbling in and out before that, but there was some form of a simulator for 15, 20 years before that.
Yeah, right. But Apple it wasn't the first one to come out with a smartphone. There was a Palm before that, but everyone thinks so. Yeah, we'll give you credit for it.
What I would say is that when I got into it, simulators were just big toys, big video games, and they weren't very accurate at all. Mm-hmm. And what we brought to the industry through a series of technologies was a very serious level of accuracy, so that serious discerning golfers found them useful. They had legs, they could have their real game in them. Retailers now all of a sudden we for the first time would use them for club fitting and for teaching, and they became true indoor golf with some technologies that we released starting in 2002.
Okay, and how did you get to that point? Where were you in your career as far as technology? Were you deeply involved in the technology world?
Really going back to kind of the root of it, my brother was a good bit younger than me, and he was younger than Gates, maybe 4 years maybe, but he was one of those stereotypical kids that was into computer kind of stuff. Before there were PCs, before there were microcomputers. So, he went to a prep school in Virginia, starting his junior year in high school, that had a mainframe. So he was one of these kids that lived in the computer room, in the mainframe room with, Mountain Dew cans and pizza boxes all over the place. And then when he went to college, he was the same thing. But there was a board game called by 3M called Thinking Man's Golf, where you had a kind of a picture of holes, and you had laid out this grid and rolled dice, and you would aim and you'd roll dice, and we go out so far and over so far. And so for his biggest college project for 4 years, he worked on developing software that would emulate and improve on this concept of Thinking Man's Golf. So it was like literally the world's first computer golf game. And so turn the clock forward 10 years or so, or actually more, and about 10 years, I guess. And I went to him, and I was in other business. I said, this software thing, sort of like Vernon Kelly, it's like, this software thing sounds really interesting. There's a lot of growth in this industry. You're a software guy. We should start a company. And he said, great. And I said, but you got to tell me what software is, and then we'll go from there. So that's how ignorant I was. But that was in the sort of mid to late 80s. And we started a company called Friendly Software, and we put out a golf game very early 90s, and we had great critical acclaim. We ended up doing a game with Greg Norman, and then we ended up producing Microsoft Golf. So we were big in golf simulation software ultimately, and it was that software that became the software component of About Golf simulators, along with, basically simulators. The two things you need are, you need the software that, we have the courses and the functionality and the trajectory physics to model the shots accurately and that sort of thing. And then you have the tracking, basically a launch monitor, so you can get the launch conditions, the velocity, the trajectory, and spin. You take that and translate that into the shot, and you portray it on the screen. Voila, you have a simulator. And we actually introduced what's called phased array radar to the industry. We funded the development of an indoor iteration of some radar technology, ballistic tracking technology, that was originally developed for battleships to track artillery fire.
Wow.
That same architecture is what TrackMan is today, although they've refined it quite a bit.
Sure.
But we actually were using phased array radar in golf before TrackMan was started. And then in 2000, that was 2002, 2008. That was disruptive. The serious golf people took notice, and it was at a critical mass at that time of accuracy that all of a sudden, simulators became serious stuff. But then they saw the deficiencies in radar, and they kept asking us, telling us, well, we need better. So we developed the first true machine vision, which is imaging cameras, but very intelligent cameras, which is really the ultimate approach to this point. And all but one TrackMan has now a radar system for simulators. But all of the other major players out there use imaging. But we were the first with imaging in 2008. So that was highly disruptive. But there's a bunch of companies now that have quite accurate systems.
So was your original vision to make this into a teaching tool or a video game? I mean, did you see it as being a significant player in instruction? I'm sorry I asked you two questions.
No, that's okay. Actually, no, I thought of it as when I got into it initially, I was thinking much more along the lines of entertainment, but entertainment in the sense of truly replicating a round of golf indoors. So, I used to say it's real, it's just indoors. In other words, you use a club, you use a ball, you make golf swings, you wear a glove. You hit shots, you plan them, you manage your way around the course. When you hit the shots, what happens in the simulators, what happens on the course within reason. And so we're replicating a real round of golf for the very first time. And that still is where the meat of the market is. But what happened was it was at a time when, and there's this big transition. At that point, a simulator is really just the ultimate launch monitor. Right. And now launch monitors are mini simulators. So, the line has been blurred. But, the launch monitor industry was just getting started. A funny story is that I used to lean on Reed Exhibitions, who runs the PGA Tour, the PGA merchandise show, the biggest show in golf every January in Orlando. And, 11, 12 years ago, there were no categories, not even any broad categories, in their directory that they had identified under which a launch monitor or a simulator could be placed. It really wasn't until after that, Simeon article I wrote that I was able to convince read exhibitions start recognizing simulators and launch monitors as a legitimate product in the golf industry. Now, understand, they had a specific category for cigar holders to mount on your carts and on your bag. But they
That'll
did not
improve
have
your
a
game.
category, even a broad category under which this type of technology could be identified. That's how that's sort of the oil and water of the golf industry and technology. Right. But anyway, so that's when sort of the move to launch monitors was taking place, and a lot of the retailers, as an example, that big sucking sound that took place about 30-40 years ago from green grass, from the pro shops to the off-site retailers, where because you couldn't buy a set of premium clubs anywhere but a pro shop when I was growing up. But now you go to Golf Galaxy or PGA Tour Superstore or Golf Town in Canada to buy them. They're all off-site. So guess what? They had ranges right out the door from the pro shops where you could practice the clubs. They didn't have that in the retailers. So simulators were the answer. So they brought the range to the off-site retailers by putting in simulators. But simulators were just entertainment until we came along, and then they would have hitting bays with more, with the old launch monitors, like Vector as an example. But when our simulator came out with the level of accuracy, that's when, as an example, PGA Tour Superstore started putting as many as 10 of our simulators in a single store. Golf Town in Canada, number 2 golf retailer in North America, and they own Canada, they would have like 1 or 2 full swing systems and then 3 or 4 or 5 practice bays where they taught. The simulators were just for entertainment. But then what they did was they turned their practice bays into about golf simulators, and then they converted their full swing systems to about golf simulators. Actually, all of those simulators I'm talking about, I left About Golf in 2010. All of those golf simulators I'm talking about in those 2 major chains, they've now all been converted to Foresight, which is, in my opinion, the best launch monitor product in the industry today. And as evidenced by the fact that it was just announced that they were being acquired for $474 million.
Wow.
So in any case, what happened was the market came to us. We didn't go. We definitely went out and marketed to the retailers, but it was the club fitters, the teachers, the retailers that really identified to us that we really got something for serious stuff. And so then we started putting more and more focus on that, which is what drove us to develop our imaging technology, our machine vision technology that we released in 2008.
Okay. Listen, we're going to take another quick break. We'll come back, and I have so many more questions right after this. As I'm recording today's episode, the 2021 World Series between the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros is about to begin. Not the teams I was hoping to see play each other in the Fall Classic, but they rarely are. I actually think it will be a competitive series with a small viewing audience. It's also the time that Radio Baseball Cards podcast comes to its annual conclusion. But this is kind of exciting and disappointing for me, as it's also the end of the final season of Radio Baseball Cards, as the show was originally produced in 1987 with only 162 episodes. It was a great run and some of my all-time favorite production work. But we end with some pretty incredible World Series memories from the incredible 1977 Fall Classic between the Dodgers and the Yankees by Willie Randolph, with your host, Hall of Famer Don Drysdale.
Here's another Radio Baseball Card. In 1977, Willie Randolph played in his first All-Star game, which happened to be at Yankee Stadium. As exciting as that was, it was just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, you have to understand, I'm only like 22 years old. We were in New York at the time. Again, I grew up in the city knowing that, one day, hopefully, I could play Major League Baseball. So here I am.
If you're a fan of history, or a fan of baseball, or even better, a fan of baseball history, please check out all 4 seasons of the Radio Baseball Cards podcast. Short stories as told by the greatest players of the 20th century from wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Bill, I'm really curious, what does the screen contribute when you're hitting into a screen now and you're getting the visuals of where the ball's flying and what it's doing and all that stuff? How much does the screen contribute? Or is that just like hitting into a net, but you're getting a visual so you can kind of see what the computer is dictating or reflecting what the ball is doing by all the angles and spin rate and things like that?
Yeah, but there's probably 1.5 questions there that could come out of that. In that, the lesser component is, a golf simulator screen has to be pretty important. It has to have some pretty interesting functionality in that it has to do a really good job of being like a movie screen. Okay, it's like a movie screen that you hit golf shots into all day long at up to 200 miles an hour.
Right.
And so you have the performance of the screen itself, and the industry is really advanced. We were the first with a seamless screen and a quiet screen and various other things. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on R&D on screens. Now that I've come back in the industry, I just go to one of my old suppliers and they sell me. I've got 2 rolls of fabric out in our warehouse that were designed specifically for indoor golf simulator screens. It's the only thing it's sold for, and it has no seams and all that sort of thing. But the real question was, the image that's on the screen. So all right. So first of all, you're showing what you would see if you were on the course. So if you're playing golf, you're behind a tree, whatever. You see the trees, the fairway, the green, the bunkers, whatever. It portrays what you would see if you were playing on a real golf course and you'd hit your shot to that location, number one. And that requires accurate and robust and elegant replication of the golf courses. And there's, in products that are out there, there's a really runs the gamut of the level of quality. A lot of them will just use GPS data online or stuff like Google Earth and federal government aerial survey, 3-dimensional survey data for terrain. When we did the best course, when we did really good courses, we would do, like when we did St. Andrews, the 3 primary courses St. Andrews, we did aerial, what's called photogrammetric aerial surveys, where we got everything within about 4 centimeters as far as X, Y, and Z coordinates. Wow. You can actually now go out and laser greens to within millimeters if you want. But the accuracy we got was great. Then we would literally go on site and we would take like between 5,000 and 6,000 photos of every golf course, of every 18-hole course. This would not be to portray in the game, but to basically see all the views from everywhere, all of the background, the trees, the horizons, the houses. When we did Pebble Beach, we actually got the blueprints of the clubhouse.
Wow.
An interesting story about Pebble Beach is a person came in one time and we showed her 18 at Pebble Beach. She was a pro and she said, well, this is amazing, except that that's the famous tree in the middle of the fairway. That's not the right tree.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, well, that interests me. Let's go into our club, our course building department and see. So I took him into the head of our department. It was about four guys, and his name was Eric Foos. And I went in and I said, Eric, she said the tree on Pebble Beach isn't right. And he said, well, how long, when were you last there? He said, a couple months ago. He said, well, a month ago, a storm took that tree out. Oh. And then he got some actual live photos of the tree that they had replaced it with. He goes, this is the tree they put in. Wow. And which was the tree she saw. Another guy one time said on Harbor Town, he said, look, wait a minute, down the first fairway. He goes, go see that house? We'll aim over at that house. Okay. He goes, you see that window up there at the top? Yeah. The folks said, yeah. He goes, that's my house, and I just put that window in like 3 months ago. Stuff like that. And I remember a pro, Chris Perry, who was a touring pro. He was in one day, and he was playing the 10th hole, or the first hole at Spyglass Hill, and he knocked on the green about 12 feet from the hole, his third shot. And I was started to show him how you read the green. He goes, no, I don't know. I played this many times. I know exactly what it does. And so he played it, the speed and the break. It had a fair amount of break from left to right, and he knocked it right in the hole. I was so thankful. But, so you can get to some pretty anal levels of quality.
Sure.
When you replicate a course. So you have that, and then you have trajectory physics, which basically is an algorithm that applies everything about, the physics of a golf ball in flight relative to spin and aero coefficients and that sort of thing, that models the flight. And then you have, the ball flying. Then you have all the collisions, whether you're hitting a rock or a ball washer, landing on a side slope or whatever, and relative to wind and temperature and rain and all that sort of stuff, humidity, altitude. I had one customer call me one time, and he said, I'm in the simulator and I'm only hitting my 7-iron 145 yards. He was a mature guy. And I thought, that sounds about right. He goes, no, I hit my 7-iron 165. I said, okay, are you pretty sure of that? He goes, I have a 165-yard par 3 on my property. and I hit it with a 7-iron. And I got to thinking, wait a minute, he's all overlooking Lake Tahoe. I said, Joel,
windy
what's
downhill.
your altitude?
Yeah.
What altitude are you at?
Right.
He goes, like 7,200 feet.
It's like, that's why you hit it 165.
So I just buzzed our developers on the physics side. I said, well, so what's the sim? It said at sea level. I said, what would 145 yards 7-iron go if it was at 7,000 feet? He said about 165.
Bingo.
So we adjusted his altitude, and all was good.
Perfect.
So you have all that kind of stuff, and then you just the best systems do the best job of that.
Right. So now it seems like the golf simulator has developed enough that it's home entertainment. And that's what your new business is, right? Is that what Clarity.golf is helping people develop these simulators for home entertainment?
Today, our major thrust is two things. We aggregate, sort of like an AV dealer aggregates a home theater. We is something that didn't exist back then, but we are capable of aggregating, which means that we can go out and buy off the shelf a lot. We can buy a Foresight. We can buy a Unicore, which is a clone of the About Golf tracking. We can get a TrackMan. And we can aggregate it with the software, and we can design. And we have a sew shop here where we can produce the screens and the enclosures and all the other stuff. And we have all the ties in for the best pricing on projectors and turf and all of that. So we can design and aggregate a system. That's one of the two things we're doing today. We're going to be doing a lot more in the future, but that's one of the two things. The other thing is that I think we are the only organization in the industry worldwide that legitimately provides highly educated and knowledgeable, because there's a dearth of knowledge out there, unfortunately, highly educated and knowledgeable advice on all of the technologies and, all of the nuances, all of the considerations you have to make when you're installing a simulator in your home, but really any installation. But yeah, we're mostly focused on the people that are doing in their homes, because that's where the major mistakes are frequently made. And ill-conceived. So I got one customer that's in the process of knocking walls out. I have another one that had to relocate it, from one room to another that he had built out. It's still a compromise. I had one guy a number of years ago that built out a simulator space. It wasn't the right space. If he had come to us, he could have easily built the right space. Instead, he ended up putting in his living room, much to the dismay of his wife. Of
course.
But we do all this for free and with no strings attached. We don't put you on an email list. We don't do any of that. So we just literally, if you email Bill Bales at Clarity.golf, and I'm not really big on plugging things, but that's how you do. You reach me. I open the emails, I read them, I answer them, and I've given people complete plans that they were able to go out and just do it on their own. And obviously we have customers that said, we'd like you to do it. We don't want it. But like I'll save a customer if customer's going to one of the big companies. I could, even if we do it and earn our fee, we'll do it. We can save them like $20,000 for the same exact level of performance and quality. I was asked by one in one interview, well, how can you save them $20,000? I said, well, really, quite simply, we just make $20,000 less, and it's actually true.
Wow.
But there's huge margins in the big companies have huge margins.
Sure.
And they overspend. We're a very efficient operation, and we don't need to make big margins. And we save people money, and we get them the right answers. But they don't have to buy from us. We'll actually advise them entirely for free.
Well, if people have the space and the interest, and a wife would let you put it in the somewhere in the house other than the living room,
yeah, right.
Then you got to check it out. It's Clarity, Clarity, Clarity.golf. And you'll see a picture of Bill right there and his email address, and you can reach out to him and figure out if that's what you want to do. It sounds fascinating. I don't have the space. I would love to do it, but there's no way I could.
I'll have a solution for you soon.
Oh, then we'll have you back on the show. Bill, it was great talking to you.
Fred, thanks so much.
Okay, that was a tease I wasn't expecting. So let's plan on getting more information from Bill when he has a solution for those of us who'd love to have a simulator but don't have the space. Stay tuned for that. Now, of all the golf instructors that are out there on YouTube and social media, and there are a lot of them, there's one who's new to me that is truly unique. Now, I've introduced you and my golf buddies to a lot of different teachers, but none have the personality and charisma that people are not just talking about him on the golf course, they're quoting him and imitating him. His name is Manolo Vega, and his channels are called Manolo Teaches Golf. Not only is he incredibly entertaining, he has some really strong advice that can help any golfer. If you've seen him, you know what I mean. But here's my issue. I cannot figure out how to get in touch with him because I want to interview him for an upcoming episode. So if you know how to get in touch with Manolo, can you please put us in touch? Just send it to golfsmarterpodcast@gmail.com or click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com. Thank you. Golf Smarter is your podcast for caddy. And like caddies, we humbly and graciously accept tips for services provided. The tip jar is now open. Just click on donate at golfsmarter.com.